We are so excited to have y'all with us this afternoon for our very first webinar series in the Staying Connected series. This one is going to be called Accessibility Strategies Online. Today, you will be hopefully entertained and introduced to some of the team from the Virtual Instruction Services division at DPI. My name is Betsy Hicks. I represent the Northeastern region of our great state. I'm a virtual instruction consultant. Christine Barbario represents the Southwest as a virtual instruction consultant. And also with me is my dear friend and colleague, Tricia Eller. Tricia, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I am the virtual instruction consultant up here in the Northwest region in the foothills, and I am excited to be able to join everybody today.
This first series or first session in our series, we are so tickled to feature Donna Murray as our main speaker today. Donna has over 26 years of experience as an educator in North Carolina, and she is the very first digital accessibility specialist with the Department of Public Instruction. She brings with her a wealth of knowledge, both as a classroom teacher, a digital teaching and learning consultant, and now in her new role. She is committed to accessibility and digital equity, and so we cannot wait to get our learn on today with Donna Murray. Before we get started, we do have an opening inclusion activity to do with you. I hope that this will be something fun and not too hokey. I know it's been a day, but let's go ahead and play. The way this is going to work, it is a would you rather game. So, oops, there we go. That's a little bit better for your eyeballs. If you've never played Would You Rather before, this is quick. There's only a few. But the scenarios are going to be presented to you as Would You Rather questions, meaning some of these questions might be pretty odd, but you will choose your preference for each of the situations that's being presented to you. So oftentimes, neither one of the scenarios or situations is appealing, and that's what makes it kind of fun. So when you share your answer in the chat, that's how we're going to communicate with this icebreaker. Please be sure to answer in the I would rather blank because blank format, okay? So let's get started. Would you rather be able to talk to animals or speak a language of your choice? I would rather because. Ooh, language. Yes, Joanna, for each of the questions, please. Okay, David would rather speak a language too. Tricia would like to talk to animals. Tricia's got a soft spot in her heart. She's got some puppy dogs whom she is very close. I do not want to know what my dogs are thinking, Lindsay. They're probably thinking, get me out of this house with this woman. All right, that is fun. Let's move on to our next one. Okay, would you rather be trapped in a broken elevator or stuck on a broken ski lift? I have a hard time even reading that without feeling like I need to take a deep breath. Being stuck in an elevator makes me feel a little panicked. Ooh, Vicky said the view is so much better on a ski lift. I couldn't agree more. How beautiful. And we never get snow in the Northeast, so I would love to see that beautiful sight. Ooh, Donna, that's a good point. Ignorance is bliss. You don't know how high you are. You might be on the 0.5 floor. It's not a very long way to fall if you're doomed. Okay, lots of people say elevator. Might get a little chilly on a ski lift, but I think that's what I'm going to choose. All right. Would you rather change your eye color or your hair color? I have changed my hair color quite a few times, so I think I would like to change my eye color. Ooh, Colleen said hair color. Ooh, Christine, lavender, that would be fun. Yes, changing your eye color because it doesn't come in a box. Fewer chemicals. Oh, I love that. I love gray. I think gray is distinguished. I'm getting more and more and more of them. Every time I turn around, it's like, bam. All right. Let's see. Would you rather be overwhelmingly busy or extremely bored? Joanna, I like me for me era. I love that. Yeah, I agree. Staying busy keeps me out of trouble. When I get extremely bored, I tend to do a little bit of shopping, and I don't need to be doing all that. All right. I've got one more. This one's really hard for me because I'm so talented at both. Would you rather have a beautiful voice or be a magnificent dancer? I'm totally kidding. I can't carry a tune in a bucket, and sometimes I have 2 left feet. A dancer. Love it. Ooh, so Heather, you would trade out your dance training for a voice. That's awesome. Barbario said voice. Colleen says voice. Oh, I love the power of music too, Donna. It can set the tone for a day, and if you're in a rut, it can get you right on out of it. David says voice, just because. Oh yeah, the physical movement of dance. It is art. Scott says dance too. Lindsay, you've got a great talking voice. All right. Well, y'all, thank you so much for playing. Because this is our very first Remote Academy webinar and geared towards those of us who are teaching online and working primarily online, we wanted to start to build a network. And so you might have seen something in the chat that stuck out to you and you thought, oh man, that was really funny, or I'm noticing that this person has in their tagline what school with which they are employed, and that's pretty close to me. This is a great way to begin building that network. So we'll do a optimistic closure at the very end, but we wanted to kick it off with this. But I know you didn't come to this today to play games with me online. You came to hear Donna Murray. So with that, Donna, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me share my screen. And I always struggle to make sure I can have the chat pulled up. Do anybody have like the trick to make that happen in Teams?
So, Donna, if you have the availability to do it, I often will have Teams open on a screen over here.
Gotcha.
And I follow the chat there. I don't even try to have the chat window open inside the meeting. Does that make sense?
Wait, yep, that's exactly what I needed. Thank you. All right. I see some familiar faces on here. Hey, Lindsay. Hey, Joanna. Hey, friends. Hey, David. I think those are 3 names I know I recognize right off the bat. I'm so thrilled to be with you this afternoon. I have a slide deck shown on the screen, but I'm also going to throw the link into the chat in case you'd like to follow along. There are some links embedded in here. You can either explore as we go, or you can, again, just follow along on the screen, whatever works for you. Since we're a fairly small group, I'm going to switch up our activities just a little and just kind of use the chat feature in our Teams meeting today for our discussion, or feel free to unmute if you're comfortable doing so. I have on the next slide, maybe, here we go, a couple different ways that you can access. Again, you can click on the link in the chat to access the slides, but I also have a link where you can make a copy. So if you'd like to make a copy of the slides and be able to put in your own notes as we're talking today, please feel free to do that. If you need live captioning on, you should be able to access that in Teams by going to the More option, the 3 dots, and you can toggle to language and speech and turn on live captions. And my Rethink friends are going to help me monitor the chat. Right, friends? Betsy, Tricia. All right. I am Donna Murray. I serve in this new role as Digital Accessibility Specialist. So I have been with my colleagues in digital teaching and learning for the past 10 years at the agency, and now am proud to serve in this new role where I'm really able to devote all of my time to all things digital accessibility. I also co-lead the North Carolina Accessible Educational Materials team, or the AIM team. My co-lead is Crystal Patrick, who serves in the Office of Exceptional Children's. So if you know Crystal, she is she's always been wearing the hat around accessible educational materials, and we've been honored to be able to get some intensive technical assistance from the National AIM Center. And I've gotten to know Crystal very well, and she currently serves not only wearing an AIM hat, but serves in the role of visual impairment consultant. So if you have any questions about adaptive resources, instructional materials, you can certainly reach out to me, but Crystal in the EC division is also a great contact to have. And I saw Joanna's comment, yes, Crystal is a rock star. All right, so if you know me, you've probably heard me talk about my girl. This is my why. Olivia is my daughter. She's 18 years old and she has multiple disabilities. She is our mystery girl. My kind of classic story of Olivia is that she has never called me mama, but she said her alphabet backwards when she was 3. So there's a lot going on in that mind, and I challenge myself as an educator and as a parent to remove as many barriers as I can so that she has an opportunity to learn and to show what she learns. So it's definitely been this personal passion of mine because of Olivia and the life with her to investigate all things related to accessibility. And I say it's the sweet convergence of my love of education, all things ed tech, and then all things accessibility. So again, I'm very honored to now be serving in this role. So if you've attended a session of mine before, this may look familiar to you, but I'd like to level set. I know that we've got a few folks that probably haven't been to a session of mine. So I want to level set with this common definition of disability. I'm going to challenge us to think beyond this medical model idea of disability and really think about it through the lens of being a mismatch. So a mismatch between a person and their environment. And I'll give an example. Olivia does not like external noise that is unpredictable. So at our house, if you're going to watch a video and Olivia is around, you've got to have the volume turned down and you have to use captions. That's really, it's not that we have a hearing impairment, although I can tell as I'm getting older that that's changing. But my husband and I do not have a hearing impairment that keeps us from being able to access the volume on when we're watching a movie. But the mismatch between us and our environment requires us to use captions if we're going to be able to understand what's happening. That is a disability. It's just a situational disability. So there are permanent disabilities and there's temporary disabilities where I might be, maybe I have an ear infection. And so that's another reason I have to have captions on. But when we think about this idea of being a mismatch between a person and their environment, instead of just the medical model of disability or just our students who have IEPs or 504 plans, I think it's going to really challenge us to think about how we can make our content, especially in a virtual learning setting, more accessible for everyone. And so that's our challenge today. I encourage you to really think through that lens of definition. And so we call this a curb cut, where we have that zero level entry from a sidewalk to a street and vice versa. The idea here is that this was intended for someone like my daughter who's in a wheelchair, but it really can be helpful for everyone. And so again, if you've been to any of my sessions, I've called this the curb cut effect, and that we talk about how it can help so many people. It could help the delivery person who's got the hand trucks. It can help a teacher with all his things or all her things dragging behind them or carrying in their arms. It can help someone with a stroller. This idea of a curb cut effect is really, again, kind of ties in with that definition that I was just sharing about disability. And the takeaway here is that accessibility is essential for some. My daughter needs that curb cut in order to be able to access the street or the sidewalk, but it can be useful for everyone. And so when we design with that in mind, we can really remove barriers before our students ever get to them. So if you've not seen the TED Talk by Todd Rose called The Myth of Average, I encourage you to take a look at it. We're not going to watch it together right now because it's about 18 minutes long, but it's a really good video, and I'll kind of give you the gist of it right now. The idea is that typically we design for average, thinking that will meet the needs of most of the people we're serving. But Todd Rose talks about that that a pilot's cockpit in the military was designed with this idea of the average dimensions, if you will, of a pilot. And the truth of the matter is that when you take all of the physical dimensions and measurements of people, there really isn't an average. You have multiple across those dimensions. There's not someone that fits the average of every single one of those dimensions. So this idea of designing the cockpit to be to fit for the average pilot really didn't meet the needs of anyone. Instead, we need to be planning for designing for the extremes, because then when we have that flexibility built in, then we can meet the needs of everyone in our room. So when you get a chance, I encourage you to watch that TED Talk. I think it'll challenge some of our mindsets about this idea of serving our average student. There's another TED Talk that I just linked on here that I really like as well. It's called Blind Astronomer Listens to Stars. It's an astronomer who became blind later in life, and how she still wanted to, explore science and really stay in this career she was so passionate about. So what she did was customize and develop a way to be able to listen to the stars. So she has attached sound to sight. So instead of being able to visually access the stars, she's able to actually have sound that represents different parameters, different characteristics, so that she can distinguish among the stars and continue the work that she's doing. So this idea of learner variability is that we are all variable learners. We all have this jagged profile. So when we talk about accessibility today, I'm going to challenge us to think about how we can meet the needs of the variable learners in our classroom, and really even ourselves. I mean, thinking about how I like to process information, I think Joanna, probably Lindsay, probably Tricia can probably all agree that when I start a project or start investigating a topic, I go down this rabbit hole of research. and then I like synthesize my way back out. And that's how I like to process information. And I'm very much an introvert. So when someone, when I'm forced to like come up with an answer quickly, I automatically start panicking because I need time to process. So that's a learner variability characteristic that I have, and I know that I need to have opportunities designed so that I have some time to process. So this idea of universal design for learning is taking that curb cut model and thinking about it through the lens of education. And the idea here is that we provide multiple means for our students to be able to get engaged in content, what motivates them to get engaged with the content we're instructing them on, that there's multiple ways for them to interact with that content and have different ways for that content to be represented to them, and then different ways for them to be able to express what they've learned. So I loved this analogy. I've seen different analogies for UDL, like I've seen one where it's like a buffet, as opposed to everybody getting the same thing on their plate, a buffet, and being able to pick and choose the way you want to, to build your dinner plate. But I found this analogy recently and I really liked it, so I wanted to share it with you as well. So this idea of multiple opportunities for our students to be able to on-ramp, multiple ways for them to become engaged with the content that you have in your instruction, and then multiple ways for them to kind of interact with that content as they're learning. That would be like the multiple traffic patterns that are available. And then this idea that they would have different opportunities to demonstrate what they've learned is this idea is that the analogy translation is thinking of that as the off-ramp. So having different ways for them to on-ramp, engage in that traffic pattern, and then off-ramp, I think is just one way, one analogy that we can use to consider this idea of UDL. So I'd love for you to just take a minute and think about what is a way that you feel like you were already designing instruction for variable learners. And I'll give an example. Like, as I think back to my time in the classroom, one way that I designed instruction for variable learners is that I might have a visual representation along with a textual representation. So it's an opportunity for my students to be able to engage with that content in more than one way, and or to be able to select which one they feel like would help them understand the content better. So I'll give you just a minute, and if you feel comfortable, feel free to either unmute or put a comment in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to just internalize and process that and think about ways that you already design instruction for variable learners. Ooh, I like the addition to that analogy, rest stops as they need. I love that. A learning playlist, this or that learning playlist. I love that. Open-ended questions. Yes. Visual supports. These are great. So I'm challenging you to think about how you're already doing some UDL in your classroom, because even if you've never called it that, I dare say we are all in some way trying to design instruction so that it really meets this jagged learning profile of our students, letting them pick their strategy for math problems. I love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. There is a resource here that I'm just sharing as a takeaway. If you've never investigated this learner variability navigator, that's a mouthful, you can actually come in and select among some different models, math, kind of grade level ranges, literacy, even for adult learners, but you can also investigate by whole learner topics at the bottom. But what you can do is actually, I'll just dig in right here to the pre-K2 math factors. What I love is that you can kind of see the interconnectivity of some of the characteristics that are needed to really be successful in this area that we've picked, which was pre-K2 math. What I love is that as I'm, for example, hovering over one of the characteristics here, like hearing. It highlights and dims other characteristics that kind of tie in to that specific one that I'm hovering over. So again, what I love about this is that if I say, okay, when I'm thinking about math strategies, I really have got some students that maybe have some challenges with attention. How does that tie into all these other things, all these other moving pieces that make my learners make up part of their jagged learning profile? And then what I can do is click on attention. It gives some main ideas, how that talks about how they're all interconnected. And then it even gives you some research-based strategies for this factor. So I love this as a tool where you can kind of start investigating some some instructional strategies to help address some of the variability in your learners. And that's definitely a rabbit hole to go down. So I encourage you, when you have time, to take a look at that tool and see if it can provide you with some additional strategies that maybe you haven't thought of before. All right, so assistive technologies. This is not going to be the main topic of our conversation today, but I just wanted to briefly distinguish between assistive technologies and accessible technologies. So assistive technologies are those that are really to address specific barriers for specific individuals. Again, it's a mismatch between a person and their environment, but typically assistive technologies are those that are truly individualized for a student. And while that's uber important, I want to really focus today on some accessible technologies that really are already in the devices that your students have, and how we can leverage those to help meet the needs of our students. So these next few slides, or these few slides right here about assistive technologies, are just resources for you to take away for today and to kind of help understand a little bit of the difference between assistive and accessible. So this link is just actually to a Google search, image search, where someone has actually gathered together image search results for different types of common assistive technologies. And I love that because it kind of just gives you an idea of some of the types of assistive technologies that exist. And then the next slide is just really helping you think through if you need resources on deciding how do I determine if a student needs AT, and what does that look like, and how do we go about determining which is the best fit for a student. Or if you even need a contact information for someone, we actually have an assistive technology consultant now at the agency, Josh Barton. So I've linked with his email there as well. So these are just resources if you are looking for assistive technologies. These are some resources to help you make those decisions. Accessible technologies is what I want to talk about today. This kind of goes back to the curb cut effect. What exists that we could go ahead and start using with our students that is universally designed? It's already part of the operating systems and tools that we use, so that our students could potentially have barriers removed before they even get to them. So I have actually I've done a couple presentations on what I call hidden gems. These are those accessibility features that are baked in to our operating systems. But I've also kind of translated some of my slide decks into a document where I've tried to organize things that would make it hopefully easier for you to find. So if you are following along in your personal slide deck, you'll see that link that will take you to this document. Otherwise, you can look at my screen share here and see that the way I have this structured is with Google, Apple, and Microsoft. So with Android, Chrome, Mac, iOS, and Windows operating systems, how to locate the accessibility menu so you can even see what exists. You can see shortcut links. I even have videos linked that will give you more information about the accessibility features. And then underneath that, I have built out tables where I've tried to kind of categorize some common functionality. So for example, let's say you want to know how you can use a screen reader, or what screen readers are available in the tools that you and your students have. So I have linked, in this table here, you can see across what screen reader features exist in the Google operating systems, Apple, and Microsoft. You'll see that as I scroll down, I've got vision, I have hearing, I even have neurodiversity. So if you're looking for ways to maybe remove distractions from the screen for students, then you can see again across the operating systems what's available. So again, I've tried to group them by functionality and then point you in the direction depending on what devices you and your students have on what's available. So let's take just a minute, and you'll see I also have mobility. Let's take just a minute, and I encourage you to take a look, and even if you're just looking at that first column where I've kind of listed some categories like screen reader, magnification, captioning, remove distractions, how to use your keyboard to access materials. Take a look at those, just that first column, and see if there's anything that kind of piques your interest, or if there's something that you think, oh yeah, I've already used that feature before. And I'll give you just a minute to kind of peruse that document. If you're following along on the screen up here, I'll try to go back up to the top here and scroll slowly so you can follow along. So again, we're just looking to see if there's something that you might be interested in exploring later, and or possibly something that you've already tried that you might want to share with the group in a moment. So I see some folks have added some things in the chat already. If you, again, feel comfortable unmuting, please feel free to share. Otherwise, if you would like to share something in the chat, I'd love to hear from you. Do you see something that you want to dig into later, and or something that you've tried before that you'd like to tell us about?
So Donna, there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Janet has asked, have you used Google background noise suppression? She's wanting to know, does it suppress my noise or theirs?
That's a great question, Janet, and I'm not sure I know the answer to that because I have not. I know I have a slide in our slide deck here. Let's see. Actually, yeah, right there, that talks about the differences between, or not the differences, but the feature or functionality for background noise suppression. So if you do use Google Meet, Teams, WebEx, Zoom, if there's something else I've missed that someone uses, please let me know and I'll add it to the slide deck. But I was going with some of those that I know are frequent use tools across the state. But I'm really not certain. Has anyone tried that before? I have a screenshot here actually of Google Meet, how to turn it on. But that's a great question.
That's what I was looking at, and I don't currently teach remotely, but in the instance that I do, I would be using Google Meet. So I just wondered if anybody had experience with that.
So I'm going to make a leap here, Donna. It might be wrong, but the headphones that I use are background suppression or noise canceling headphones, meaning that the microphone itself is supposed to kind of limit what you hear going on around me. So if my dogs bark loud enough, it'll mess up my microphone. But if there's just noise, TV in the other room, the way this mic is, it's not supposed to pick that up. So I could be wrong, but I think maybe the purpose to the noise suppression or the noise cancellation is to maybe try to minimize any background noise that's happening beyond just your voice that the microphone's picking up. But I might be wrong about that. So.
And no, that's a great assumption, Tricia. And I'm also wondering too, if the functionality, I'm wondering if the functionality is similar across all. To be honest, there's so many different platforms like this, and I know my DPI friends can attest to this, between jumping in WebEx and then on Teams and then going to Zoom. Sometimes it's even difficult to remember what's what among the ones, but I did link to each one here, so hopefully the answer will be, quickly found when we're, let's see, filling papers. So like the Teams one, it sounds like it's filtering out the speaker's background noise. I would make the assumption that that's the case, but Janet, we can dig into the.
Okay, I'll look into it. Yeah.
Good deal.
Thanks.
And then, so Beth was wondering, she just said she's curious about the eye control for Windows versus having an eye tracker. I don't know if you know anything about that, Donna, but that's just something that she shared.
Let me get back to that toolbar that always gets in your way when you're trying to navigate through all your tabs. Okay, so the eye control for in Microsoft. So this is similar to what I think I'm answering this question correctly. Please let me know if I'm not. But essentially, this is about setting up that eye tracker so that you would be navigating the page using a device that would, a camera that would be able to track your eye movement. So I know in the past years ago when I was investigating eye tracking, there was some free software that you could use, and I could use my little. This was back before we had the embedded cameras on our laptops, or we were using our desktop and we were trying to navigate using eye. I could just use my Logitech camera, and I would just prop it up there. And so even with that free software years ago, I was able to demonstrate how you could use the eye tracking. Now Windows has that built right in. So I'm sure that there's, of course, also a functionality to add an assistive technology device, eye tracker, but Windows has that built right in now. So that's, I think, a pretty awesome tool. Again, what I love about these, what I'm calling the hidden gems, is that these are things that are built right into the systems. It may not be exactly what you need, but especially when we're starting to trial and test out some assistive technologies, I challenge us to look and see if there's already something built in that might give us an idea if we're even on the right track for the type of tool that someone might need. There's one tool that I love called Guided Access on iOS, like for an iPad, that would enable you to keep students from being able to access anything else except the app that you have them in. So I think about my daughter, for example. You give her iPad, she's going to want to go to iTunes or YouTube. If you're explicitly wanting her to have her speech app open, her speech app that has her, it's her augmented alternative communication device, she's not going to stop right there. She's going to want to be able to go to that when she wants to. And iTunes and YouTube are probably going to win, especially if she's at school and has access to those. So being able to use a tool like Guided Access is going to remove those distractions for her and also ensure that she has access not only to the app that I want her to be in, but even parts of the screen. I can even fine tune it so that I can block out certain parts of the screen so she can't click on an ad or she can't click on the settings button. So there are tools like that, again, that are already built into the system. Part of it is just when you don't know what you don't know, you don't even realize that it's available. So I'm hoping that this document at least kind of points you in the direction where you can learn more about some of the features and functionality. And thank you all for sharing your, trying to scroll back through the chat here to see. I love that, Betsy. Yes, I think there's what's the one for Google that's called for the focus reading mode. So that one is just a quick click of a button that will enable you to kind of split your screen. Essentially, it pops up a kind of a screen on the side that will remove distractions and even allow you to do things like change the color contrast and the text size. So just with a click of a button, you can actually use something like reading mode. So there's lots of tools. Hopefully there's something there that interests you. And then of course, if there's something that you know of that you'd love to share with us, please continue throwing that in the chat. In typical Donna fashion, I'm looking at the time, it's 4:40, and I know we've still got a lot to cover. So I'm going to move on and talk about a couple of functionality pieces. We kind of already talked a little bit about background noise suppression, but I wanted to talk about live captioning. So in this virtual learning environment, if you're using tools like Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or WebEx or Zoom, or even if you are just using the Chrome browser, there are options built right in for live captioning. And if you need an advocacy point to make a case for students to be able to use live captioning, I have linked to some research here that that shares about 100 studies that document captioning actually improves comprehension of, memory for, and attention to videos, not just for our students, not just for our developing readers, but for everyone, including adults. And I kind of attest to that. You know, I told you we use captioning at home. If Olivia's around, we have to. Now I just leave it on all the time. And I find that I can process information better, especially if there's a strong accent. But even if I'm just watching a YouTube video, I just feel like I'm able to process better. And now I've found research that proves there's science behind that. So I encourage you to use that as an advocacy point if you're trying to make a case for using live captioning. It can help all of us. And so I've linked here directly to the instructions on how to turn on live captioning in those tools. Let's see. Okay. Just checking the chat real quick. So we've already talked a little bit about background noise. I know that some of you, again, may have come to a session that I've done before on designing accessible digital content. So I'm going to go through this next part fairly quickly, but I want to make sure you have all of the resources that you need so that when you're ready to dig into, or if you have questions about how to design digital content with accessibility in mind, that you've got the resources you need. So a few resources on this slide. On the left-hand side, I've just kind of pointed you into to some links that are specific for Canvas, like Google Classroom, and then for Microsoft, like if you're using Microsoft Teams with students or Microsoft Documents. On the right-hand side are a couple of resources that I have created. So when you are designing digital content, I encourage you to come here, and I've kind of divided up this resource into a few pieces. One, this is kind of the setting the stage, kind of this idea that kind of like we started at the beginning of today's session. What does it mean when we're talking about disability and accessibility? This kind of sets the stage. Then I have tips and tricks, strategies for designing accessible content. So making sure that you do things like that you're adding textual descriptions to your images, how to make sure that you're putting enough contrast between the color of your text and the background color, how to make sure that you're using heading styles, things like that. So this is kind of a self-exploration webpage where you can dig into the pieces that you need to focus on. The next part is really helping you focus on specific types of content and even specific tools. So let's say you're going to be creating a presentation. This actually has resources on how to create an accessible Google Slides presentation, or how to create an accessible PowerPoint presentation. So this is kind of chunked in different ways to kind of meet your needs, hopefully meet you where you are. But I also even have a basic checklist. So if there's something that you just know you need to have printed beside your computer, so that as you're designing content, you can say, oh, yep, I've kind of looked at the color contrast. Yes, I've used headings. Yes, I've added alt text to my images. This is just a simple checklist that you can make a copy of and use as you'd like. So the next few slides are just some of those things that I talk about in my intro to digital accessibility. So if you are designing digital content, which I imagine we all are, then these are some of those tips and tricks. So you've kind of got a couple access points here. One, dig into some resources that are specific to your learning management system or tools. You can use some of the resources that I've created. And I also have kind of chunked some, what I'd say, accessibility big wins on these next few slides. So making sure that you are adding text to represent the visual image. If you have a visual image, you've got to think about folks who would not have access to that visually. Maybe they have a visual impairment. Maybe their web page doesn't load because their Wi-Fi is slow. I think we've all come across pages where an image doesn't load accurately. So having text as an alternative to that image is so important. Think about all the images that we come across every day. So these are just some tips about alternative text. Making video and audio accessible can be kind of a heavy lift. Fortunately, there's lots of tools these days that will help you automatically caption and automatically build transcripts. So for example, when I think it was Betsy that hit our record button for today, it actually is creating a transcript to go along with the recording. There's also tools like in YouTube where you can upload a video and it can help you build those auto captions and transcript. So I just made a note here to make sure that you review those. If you're going to do anything where you're relying on AI or an embedded tool somewhere to help you with the transcript and captioning, make sure that you review and make edits to those before you share them widely, so that in case you didn't articulate clearly, or if you're like Donna Murray and your is your filler phrase, it may not pick up accurately, so you're going to want to make sure you edit those. So I've included some links here to kind of help you through that. Accessible links. Now this is one of those where most folks don't know how to make accessible links. They don't know that they might have been making inaccessible links all along. So this is one of those times where when we know better, we're going to do better. So please avoid using things like click here or read more, because it's really inaccessible, honestly, not just for folks who might be using a screen reader, where if they're tabbing through a document, they can go from one link to the next. If they all read click here, click here, click here, there's really not any indication of what's going to be happening when they click there. Where are they going to be going when they click those links? Instead, what we want to do is create links that work out of context. And so I have an example here. The same link that I've linked to on the left-hand side is the same link that I've linked over here. Instead of saying click here, now I've highlighted and linked the words create links that work out of context. And guess what? When I click on that link, that's where it's taken me, is to a page that helps me understand how to make descriptive links. So that's a quick win for accessibility, is to make sure that we really include text, highlight text, and link text that could stand alone. And y'all, some of these things I think are pretty self-explanatory. And I think sometimes we just need to be cognizant and step back and think sometimes, okay, I'm all about some aesthetics and I like a really curly font that's very eye-catching, but may not be easy to read. So just taking a moment as you're designing content and think to yourself, have I really used high enough color contrast? Is it easy to read? Am I using a font that's easily readable and a font size that's easily readable? These are just some things that are quick wins that can really make our content accessible. And another feature too is just, or another strategy is just consider how you build out your course materials. Make it so that it's user-friendly enough that your students aren't spending all of their time trying to find where they need to be. Instead, they can focus on the content itself. So when we're really structuring, especially like an online course, having that clear structure and layout, using consistent formatting, having the navigation kind of set up so that it's intuitive can really help students cognitively focus on the content instead of just having to find their way. you ever been on one of those websites where you're just like, I don't even know what I was looking for because I've spent so much time trying to find it that I've gotten lost and I've totally lost my train of thought. So that's kind of a big win that I think is easy for us to handle. There are some built-in accessibility checkers. So I have a screenshot here of the one that's built into Canvas to give you an idea of what happens when you use an accessibility checker. So if you don't add alt text to an image, this is a space where you can, or the accessibility checker is going to tell you that you didn't have alt text and give you an opportunity to learn where to put alt text and give you a chance to go ahead and correct that error. So I love that we have tools now that have accessibility checkers built right in. I'm going to throw a link in the chat. I know we're coming up on time, but I'm going to just a couple more minutes. And so I want to give you an opportunity to try out the immersive reader tool. So if you click on the link that I just threw in the chat, you'll see, and I'll share it up here on my screen as well. Got it open twice here. You'll see that there's a space at the very bottom of that page where you can actually paste in some of your own reading material, but I'm just going to try the button right up here at the top that reads try it out. And so what it's doing is actually taking the text from that web page and demonstrating to you how the tool Immersive Reader works. So when I'm in a Microsoft product like Word, or even if I'm in Canvas, because Canvas actually has Immersive Reader built right in, you can actually customize the interface, the user interface for this text. So I can click on text preferences and I can change the text size. I can increase the spacing. I can change the font. I can change the color contrast as I've done here, make the background black and the text white. I can even highlight parts of speech and even customize the color for what I'm highlighting. I can also, of course, have it read aloud. I don't know if it's going to pick up my computer screen or not, speaker or not, but let me.
Learning Tools Immersive Reader creates a reading experience that adds accessibility.
So it sounds like you guys could hear that. Thanks, Tricia. So you can see that it's kind of highlighting word by word, but I can also, let me turn off that stark contrast there. I can also do a line focus at the click of a button or highlight just a few lines at a time so that as I'm having it read aloud, it's only going to focus on 1 or 3 lines at a time, or I can turn that off. The other thing that I can do is use the embedded picture dictionary, which I love. So I can click on most words. Not all words have a picture dictionary icon, but I can click on most words and see one or multiple, like in this instance with menu, pictures to go along with that word. So think about how beneficial this could be for our students with disabilities, our English language learner or multi-language learners. I can also turn on the translation option. So let's say that I come down here to Spanish, maybe. Yes. There's actually 3 versions of Spanish in here. So I'm going to click on Latin America. And I can translate by word, which would enable me again to click on like menu. Now I can see and hear the English and the translated word.
Menu.
And see the icons. I can also, with the click of a button, translate the entire document. So now I can actually click on words and again see the English and the Spanish translation because I have both Word and document toggled on. Y'all, to me, that's just such a tremendous tool that's built right in to tools like Microsoft products as well as Canvas. So there's lots of tools that exist out there. This is just an example. Angela asked, is this not available for Chromebook users? So there is an extension that's very similar to Immersive Reader that you can get in the for Chromebooks. It's a Chrome extension. I just, of course, would say make sure that you're following the rules and guidelines in your district for adding extensions on, for data privacy and security reasons. Every district has some set parameters on what you can add and what you can't. So just investigate that before you add that, but just know that it is there is an extension that functions very similar to Immersive Reader that can be added in Chrome. And honestly, the reading mode that I had mentioned earlier is another great tool that can be used in Chrome. Not quite the full functionality of Immersive Reader, but a lot of similar characteristics. Read and write. Read and write is another great tool. Yes, that's not the one I'm thinking of. I'll go back and add that extension, because I know if I try to think of the name of it now, I really think it's Immersive Reader for Chrome or something like that. I'm sure we can Google it too, but I will make a note to go back in and add that link into this slide so that you can at least see that the link for that extension. I have a few more tools in here that are just some example AI tools. I think one of these, Christine, I think it was you that shared either Magic School or Goblin Tools with me. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that these are an example of some AI tools that exist that I think have tremendous benefit to help with ensuring that we're making things more accessible. So things like, for example, Goblin Tools. One of the things that you can do is put in, like I just put in, plan a birthday party. And you can even set how much you want to break down that task, that project. And with a click of a button, it broke down into all of these steps. Now I can customize that and take some out and rearrange things, and even again adjust the level of how much I want to break down that project. But just think about how that tool might be helpful for our students who need to be able to have that project scaffold or broken down into smaller steps. And then helping them, our students who might have executive function challenges, being able to give them some tools to help them be able to plan and organize their thoughts and resources. So that's just one tool in Goblin Tools. Magic School is very similar. In fact, it's very robust. It's growing and growing, and I know some of it has some paid features, but there's also quite a few features that still exist in the free version. Things where you could take a reading passage and either chunk it differently or even alter the readability of it. I love even things like this, the text rewriter. You can put some text in and then like the example that they give here, rewrite it so that it's in different words, it's half as long, and it includes the following details. So they, I love that they're even giving examples of what you could do with tools like this one, the text rewriter. I just love that these types of tools are being developed and can really, I think, help us address some learner variability. Tricia, Magic School is awesome, yes. And Angela, Chromebooks, you're saying that you're wondering if there's a different one besides which one was mentioned earlier? The
So
read and write.
Chromebooks have a built-in functionality to the Chromebook itself, I think is what she was talking about, but it is limited. Its functionality is limited.
Yeah,
so
it has speech to text, and it has text to voice. It has both of those that you can put on the accessibility of a Chromebook, but they have been very limited. I've got a student specifically in the county who pressed a little bit harder than all the others, and they actually subscribed to Kurzweil for them.
Oh, really?
So I'm actually using Kurzweil right now for her.
Gotcha.
And I'm just trying to, I don't know, I'm just trying to get more.
Yeah. Well, and Angela, feel free to reach out. I know we're up on the hour, so please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you, think through and investigate and see what other tools might be helpful.
I guess, and I have a question, and I know this is really probably very specific, and I'm so sorry, but I've got to ask it.
Go ahead.
The student that I have this student, and like when we started working together in August of 22, she was still on a first grade reading level in fifth grade. At this point, we are getting ready to finish level 4 Inspire, and she meets it between 90 to 98%. You know, that's her average on every lesson. My concern is, have we handicapped her? She is dyslexic. She's been diagnosed with dyslexia, but she can read now. So how much of using something like this is keeping them from meeting their full potential, I guess?
And I do, you know, as a parent to a child who is dyslexic, my son is dyslexic, and it's interesting now that he's 24 to kind of see where he's landed to help, you know, so that he can kind of advocate for himself and make decisions himself on when do I use the tools, when don't I? And so you know, I think it's going to be, personally, I think it's going to be specific to each individual. I think part of our challenge is to incorporate opportunities for them to investigate different tools and use different tools, and so that they can make informed decisions on, like, for example, my son, when he's reading something on his phone, he's checking out a news website, he knows what what might be too difficult for him, and therefore it's going to be more beneficial and more efficient for him to use a screen reader for, versus something that is shorter text and maybe specific to something that he knows a lot about, that he feels comfortable being able to read himself. So I think there's got to be opportunities for them to try out different things, and then help them through the process of deciding when is an appropriate time to use these tools. I know that's kind of a broad answer, but I do think it's going to be specific to each student.
No, and I totally understand that. I get it. I just
no, but I appreciate you kind of processing that out loud, because I'm sure that's a challenge, just thinking about how do we empower and not necessarily enable to the degree that it becomes more of a crutch instead of challenging them to meet you know, a milestone that we think they can. Y'all, I know we're over time, and I apologize. In classic Donna fashion, I've put too much content in too short of time. I know that we need to wrap up. I just want to say, if you feel comfortable doing so, I would love to hear if there's something that you want to kind of challenge yourself to improve accessibility of your own instructional materials. And if it's okay with my Rethink colleagues, this will be our kind of optimistic closure, is our challenge to ourselves today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today and for spending a few extra minutes with us. If there's anything that I can help you with, please feel free to reach out. My contact info is in the slide deck, and of course, our Rethink team has my information as well.
Yes,
Thanks
and
for
I'm gonna,
joining, everyone.
hey,
And Betsy,
Dawn,
turn
I
it
was
back
just
to
gonna say, I'm gonna open up the floor because Vicky has her hand up, and
you. Okay.
so
Yes,
looks like
please.
she has a question she needs to ask right
Yes.
now. So go ahead, Vicky.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for this presentation. This has been so much helpful information. And I feel like I needed some time to read over everything and process it. But I'm an EC teacher in Online Academy. And I also work with the AT team here in my county. And I have like a lot of questions. Like, I wrote down a whole list of questions when you were talking. Do you ever offer, like, would it be possible for me to schedule a meeting with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Vicki. Feel free to email me, and we'll get connected and figure out what you guys need, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, because I really want to improve the digital accessibility and the UDL aspect of the online academy that I'm part of, and I feel like as the only EC teacher there, I'm kind of gonna have to spearhead it. So
yeah, well, I want to make sure that you have all
your support with that.
Okay. So yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Okay, thank you.
So I know that there's a hand raised, and I'm going to open up the floor, but I just want to say we have put a link in the chat to a Google form where you can sign in, and that will give me what I need so that I can generate a certificate to send to you to turn in for CEUs for this webinar. So just if you will, we have an attendance from Teams, but if you want a CEU certificate, complete that form, Google form for us. Okay, somebody else has their hand up. Beth, I think.
So I have a question too. So like, so when somebody brought up like the Google Read and Write, like Georgia, the state of Georgia, any kid that has an IEP, they now provide Google Read and Write. Are we looking at something similar? Like I had heard at one point that there were going to be some accessible programs that North Carolina would be pushing down to their schools.
I'm not familiar with those. I mean, I haven't heard that conversation. Beth, was it Beth?
Yeah.
I quit sharing, and so now I have the screen up. No, I can't. I didn't pay attention to where the voice was coming from. So Beth, I'm not sure of any. I'm certainly happy to elevate those conversations, and of course, I think through this work of digital accessibility, those are going to be some points of advocacy that I'll be making, is how great it would be for us to be able to have some tools that could be statewide. I will say too, especially through this lens, if you're not familiar, there's a whole process now that our mainly our tech directors seem to be spearheading, which is to meet some very specific data security requirements for products and tools. And so part of that conversation that I've already been having with leadership has been, what about some free tools that are already, freely accessible, even separate from the ones that we'd have to pay for or have subscriptions to, but these freely accessible ones where we aren't under contract with a vendor, how do we, broker some conversations with those vendors to say, we want and we need to continue using you, but these are now our requirements. Can we help? Can we partner together to make sure that everyone's going to have access to that? Bookshare is an example. So if you're not familiar with Bookshare, that is a tool that is a tremendous tool for our students who have a print disability. But we're working at the state level to ensure that they're going to meet those data privacy requirements. So I guess the short answer is yes, and Beth, I don't know of any conversations currently, but I have no doubt that those conversations will be happening. So if you have any tools in mind that you definitely want me to advocate for, please shoot me an email or throw them in the chat, and I'll make sure they're on the list.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
So I am, for those of you that have filled out the document, the request, this is awesome. I'm going to be using Autocrat to generate your certificate, and it should automatically email it to you. But if for some reason in the next 24 hours, you don't get that certificate emailed to you, I'll just deliver them, like I'll just individually email them because it's supposed to work, but sometimes Autocrat does weird things. So.
All right. Anybody else?
But thank you. It was really good.
Thanks. Thanks so much. I hope it was helpful. I hope there was something new for you to take away. And y'all keep throwing it in the chat. I'll make a list of these tools that you're adding are not a surprise. These are things I know about. So it's on my radar. So thanks for sharing those. And thanks for your time. Thanks for spending a few extra minutes with us. And I hope y'all have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank y'all for coming.